Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you and I have been acquainted for a while,
Mhm.
and we keep showing up at the same places. So we decided to have our own meetup, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you're here, you live here, you're in the Wenatchee Valley, and you're an attorney here. And I want to just talk about your backstory and how you got to where you are now, because where you are now is incredibly interesting. It's part of why I want to have you here. Of course, what you've done before matters too, but I really want to talk about the pivot you've made because you've made a couple of them. And let's go back to just your decision to become an attorney. And did you think working in a big practice, like kind of what was your idea about going to law school and that first big decision you made about your career? Because we're going to talk a lot about your career today.
Yeah, I was an argumentative child. So adults would often say things like, "You should be a lawyer when you grow up." And it took me about 20 years to realize that that's not a compliment. That's a way of getting a child to, placate and go away. But I ran with that. I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a little girl, probably 4th grade. I had decided I was going to be a lawyer, and I'm that stubborn. So I got it in my head, and then I went to undergrad knowing I wanted a pre-law track, and I went to law school, and they really when you're there, they really sell you on this idea of the big law and these interesting cases, and they kind of tell you that you won't have interesting work, or your work will be more interesting if you're at one of these big firms with tons of partners and other associates and things like that. And so
Which part of law were you wanting to go into, or did you know that yet?
I was a criminal justice undergrad major, so I thought I wanted to do criminal law, and I thought I wanted to do a lot of litigation. I grew up being on a stage. I love an audience. And so I thought that I would be really good at litigation. I'd be good in front of a judge. What I learned really early on in law school, though, was that I'm good if there's 1,000 people. I'm really bad if there's one person. Really bad. So, I did mock trial and things like that, and having a judge or a panel of judges decide your fate and your client's fate wasn't something that I emotionally could handle. And so in my first year of law school, I pivoted and I went into more of the corporate law, the estate planning transactional track.
And don't you think that you recognizing that about yourself happens sooner than it does for most people? I've heard a lot of stories how people get into the courtroom, they're like, "This is nothing like I thought." Even you, though you practice with mock trials and things, it just didn't do it for them
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Oh, yeah, people get into a law firm, decide, and they think that this is what they wanna do, and they'll get a few years into their career, sort of in the back of their mind knowing that it's not the right call for them before they make a transition. So, yeah, I'm really grateful that I knew myself well enough and listened to my gut and really went a different direction. My dad's side of the family are entrepreneurs. That's always what they've done, and so words like LLC and tax savings and these internal revenue codes, those were languages I spoke already, and so it was kind of like a lifeboat in law school to hear those words.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's why I went that direction.
Okay, that makes sense. So then they're romancing big firms.
Yeah.
So that's what you had on your mind, and you don't have the experience to know the difference. I mean, even if you were shadowing, that wouldn't tell you show you the whole picture. It would take a lot more than that.
Right, right, and really, you want to be in a track where you get a job after your 2nd year of law school, and then that firm hires you after your 30 or your final year of law school. And that's the traditional path to get a job in this world is you intern during a summer and then they hire you after law school. And so these big firms have really competitive internship programs. And those are the ones that career services is really pushing, or they did when I was there, right? They pushed you towards these really competitive tracks. And I, I graduated law school in 2010. It was the worst economy for job hires since the Great Depression. And so after law school, I actually went one more year. I went to our 4th year and got a tax master's. So the legal world's a little bit backwards. We get a Juris Doctorate, you get your doctorate in law, and then you can get a master's in a certain specialty or classification. So I went and got a tax master's at the University of Washington after I graduated.
And that was partly just because of the job market.
That was because of the job market.
Get off in school.
Yeah, yeah, and so I wanted the economy to rebound. I needed another year to kind of let things rebound, and I knew I would be more marketable as an attorney with this additional degree, and
Smart.
that happened to be
Yeah,
true.
smart.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
So then you do the job and you're working in corporate law for a long time at a big firm.
Yes.
And how long did you do that?
I did that for, let's see, 2011 to 16, no, to 2020. So 9 years.
9 years. Okay,
9
so
years.
9 years, and then you're getting a little antsy for going out on your own. And what was like? What were some of the main reasons for that? I mean, you had enough experience to know what this looked like, but going out on your own, you didn't have any clue yet.
No clue.
But you had the entrepreneurial background with your family.
Yes.
Kinda knew what that looked like, and it might have been the appeal of the flexibility or whatever that looked like at home.
Definitely, and I also have, and I know we're gonna get there. I wrote an article about my unearned confidence. I kind of don't have a vibe where I don't think that I'll be able to succeed in something. So it never really crossed my mind that it wouldn't be a good idea. But yeah, so we were my partners here at my current firm and I were all partners at this big firm. We had almost 30 attorneys. We didn't know anything different. That's where we were born and raised in this firm. And we had talked a while about forming our own deal. We had a lot of conflicts in the other firm, and not personal conflicts, I mean, client conflicts. So we do a lot of land use here at GGW, my current firm. And one of the partners in our prior firm represented municipalities like the city and the county. Well, you can't have both because your private landowners are fighting with the county to get permits and things. And so we had a lot of, we just had a lot of those types of conflicts checks that needed to happen. And then we didn't want to be busting our butts 80 hours, 60 hours a week, whatever it was, working when we thought if we had less overhead, if we had less staff, we could have a better life. And that ended up being even better than we, even more true than we ever thought it would be. So yeah, it was
You've
the
been
right
out on your own for how long now?
since
20.
2020.
Since 2020.
So
And what a time to break away.
it ended up being perfect.
That's when
It
a
ended up
lot of
being
people made big changes. I mean, I hear it
yes.
over and over again. I talk to so many people, as I'm sure you do, who
Yeah.
that otherwise things might have remained the same, maybe not forever, but for a little longer,
Yeah.
perhaps. Mhm.
Yeah, we let the partners know that we were gonna leave 4 days before the world shut down.
Yeah.
So we announced our departure in late February, and it was great because once COVID really hit in those first weeks of March and then April, and then you're talking May, and people still nobody's businesses are running.
Mhm.
Nobody has an expectation that their lawyer is gonna get back to them right away, so it gave us sort of the space and time to do things very practical, like the build outs and put new carpet in and things like that, and kind of get ourselves up and running. So it ended up being perfect. But yeah, we opened middle of pandemic.
Well, and it's going well, like you said.
Yes.
It's better than you ever expected.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a break. When we want to come back, in addition to your attorney life and your home life and your dog life, there is your writing life, and that is what we're here to talk about as much as anything else. So let's take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back with you, Lindsey Weidenbach. We talked a lot about your career and making that switch from big corporate to your own practice with a few other partners. And the other thing I wanted to discuss with you is just this really interesting new pivot you're making in writing. And you have a blog on Substack, and it's called How to Be a Difficult Woman. There she is.
Yes.
Admittedly, so you say. And I've been reading it. I subscribed to it a couple of weeks ago, and you and I had lunch, happy hour. We'll get to that a while back. And I started reading it, and just such good stuff. Just
Thank
such
you.
good stuff. It's so relatable. It's conversational. Your endings are perfect. It leaves me wanting to read the next thing. I just think it's such good stuff. So the reason I want to have you here, in addition to just talking about your pivot story, is to talk about the writing part. So have you always kept a journal? Have you always been writing? I know lawyers, a lot of English and history majors go on to be lawyers, and then it makes sense that it's a pivot to writing because you have to be a writer as an attorney. But what was there something more because your writing isn't attorney like? It's very, like I said, conversational.
Yeah, thank you. I did. I kept a journal as a kid that was always my preferred outlet is writing. I could just think that that's how I'm best able to express myself and my feelings. So I kept a journal as a kid, definitely. And I felt like I wanted to, I learned about Substack. It's kind of this up and coming thing for writers, and, I know we're gonna talk about it, but I'm writing a book, and so I jumped on this Substack and thought, "Well, it'd be fun to share anecdotes about society and about my life and fun stories and things that I've experienced and see where it goes."
To have that place to put these thoughts and ideas.
Yes, exactly, like an outlet, a therapeutic outlet for what's going on in my head. I can take it out of my brain, and I can put it into the world.
And much like, well, let's think. So when I was a kid, I got my first typewriter when I was 8 years old. I kept journals too, but if I'm such a perfectionist, I've gotten better about it. But if I don't like my writing in something when I was a kid, I just rip the whole page of my journal out. I have all these journals with just rip pages out.
Oh, no.
So I got my first typewriter when I was 8, and the best thing about it is it had corrective ribbon, so I could make a mistake and keep writing. And I still don't type properly because I started typing when I was 8, so the typing class didn't work out for me. But when I think about that and really, having that outlet all of my life since I was a
Yes.
little kid, whether it's writing or singing or, whatever that looks like for people, I think it's probably made me healthier in my head to have a place to put it all.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's been so nice to be able to get things off my chest or build community with other people around of our topic that you've experienced. And I've just always been an oversharer. I mean, I'm probably more active on social media than I should be, and I kind of like to be honest about what I'm going through because I think there's a lot out there that just feels really inauthentic. And so
Yeah.
part of the reason I wanted to do the Substack and I tell the stories I do tell is for authenticity purposes.
Mhm, mhm. Well, let's get to that authenticity purpose then, because one of the things I just read this morning in preparation of talking with you is your latest Substack submission, which is about quitting alcohol.
Yes.
And it's so interesting how there's a lot of sober curiosity. I think a lot of it stemmed from, well, I know based on what I've read, a lot of it stemmed from COVID, and we either drank our way through it or ate our way through it or maybe exercised our way through it, whatever we did to get through it. And so people were coming out of that needing something else. And so you made that decision at some point. How recently was that to not drink anymore? And just tell me a little bit about that decision and how big it was and how it's impacted you.
Yeah, sure. And that article in Substack is called Alcohol, Love, and Letting Go. And it's my most popular article. So it's got the most views on it. And I do think you're right that it's because this sober curiosity that people have. I made that decision in 2018. I just felt like my life was a roller coaster built around my drinking schedule.
Like,
It
what was
was
that schedule?
You'd wake up Monday and you'd think, I'm going to be good this week. And you would eat healthy and not drink alcohol. Same for Tuesday. Wednesday, I might have a beer. Thursday, I'd go out to the bars. Friday and Saturday, there'd be some sporting event or something that my husband and I would do together. And we're drinking through the whole thing. And everything turned into a drinking exercise. If you went golfing, you were drinking. If you went skiing, you were drinking. If you were out on the boat, you were drinking.
Yeah.
Well, then by the time you've done all that over the weekend, there's mimosas on Sunday, right?
Mimosas are the permission to drink in the morning. That's all they are, really.
That's all they are. And then it would start over again. Monday, I'd get my life together and think, okay, I'm white knuckling my way through the week, trying to hold on to the promise that I've given myself that I wouldn't drink this week. And I was never able to do it. And so I went out on a Tuesday with some friends. I had a couple of beers. I woke up the next morning sick as a dog. I didn't make it to the gym. I was just feeling very shameful about it. And I looked at my husband and I said, I'm never drinking again. I'm done.
That's a big proclamation.
Yeah.
And how did that did you so what was his reaction to that? Because it was part of his lifestyle too.
Yeah, I was worried about that. A lot of the things we did together involved alcohol at some point, and I was worried that I wouldn't be as much fun or I wouldn't be as connected, and the opposite has been true. He was so supportive. A few days after I made this big proclamation that I was never gonna drink, him and I were out, and I said, "Let's swing by Bob's and have some beers," and he looked at me and said, "You're done drinking." And I thought, "Okay, he's with me." He's my biggest cheerleader when it comes to these things, and and he still drinks and I don't care, and it doesn't bother me, and we still get to hang out and do these things, and I think part of that's because I was lucky enough to catch my habit before it became a real addiction that I couldn't get out from under, but it was really nice to have him on my team for that.
Did you ever consider saying, I'm not gonna drink for a while? Because then the accountability is so much less, and it's less than if you just said that 2 days later, he might have had a different response. Who knows?
I did it because the decision not to drink was like a 5 or 6-year slow burn. And I had during that period of time, I'd been trying to moderate. I had said to myself, "You're gonna go out and you're gonna have 1 beer, 1 glass of wine." And that always turned into 4 or 5. I was never able to have 1. I was never able to stop at 2 and be responsible, ever. And so I shouldn't say ever, but very rare. It and so I knew I kind of already had played with the I'm gonna drink less or I'm gonna take a break, and it never worked.
Well,
So
you were already doing that. By Wednesday or Thursday, you were already drinking again. So, yeah. So that ended up being a finite decision for you.
yes.
And how has it impacted your life? Because just like, leaving the law firm and not knowing what to expect, you become a writer and you're trying, this little corner of your world is amping up, and you say it's better than you ever could have expected to be able to have this outlet writing. How has being sober impacted your life just on a daily basis and even in your achievements, making the decision to get your own practice and start writing and all the things that are coming up for you?
I cannot say enough good things about it. Well, the thing I noticed the most was that I had a ton of time on my hands. If you start drinking in the middle of the day, the whole rest of the day, you can't be productive. And so I realized that I had lots of space in my life to do things like write and take up that hobby again. It's impacted every single aspect of my life in a positive way. I read a lot of books about getting sober. There's one called Love or Alcohol. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget the name, Heartbreak or something like that. And, these books talk about how you're going to lose friends. People are not going to understand your journey. They are not going to stick through because they're your drinking friends.
Yeah, they don't want to drink alone.
I didn't have a single friend leave me.
That's cool.
My law
Those are good. Those are good friends.
they're really good friends. I even had people go, "Great, now you're the DD."
Works for them.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back. We've been talking about your writing, and you and I met up recently, as I mentioned, and we got to have a conversation about writing and how we go about publishing and getting published. And there's all different ways these days. It's not not the traditional way is the only way, but you're going the traditional way. So let's talk about that when we come back in just a moment. We are finishing up with you, Lindsay. I think we should have you back periodically to talk about your different articles because it's a conversation piece that you write in Substack. Really, it's a conversation that you are having with your readers, and your subscribers are up to like 400. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, just over 400. It's very exciting.
In the email list building, that's a lot. That's significant.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It feels significant.
Yeah, yeah. Those are conversations I have a lot in my work about building an email list and all of that, and that's a significant number, just so you know. So let's talk about then your pivot to becoming your aspiration to
Mhm.
be an author, to become an author. And a lot of people don't understand the business of being an author. They think it's about being a writer, and it's not. There's a difference. There's the beauty and skills and talents and hard work and joy and sorrow of being a writer. And then there's the business of being an author, and they're two separate things. So you've chosen to go a traditional path
Mhm.
in getting your work published. So explain to the audience the difference between the traditional path and some of the other ways. Just tell us your path.
Yeah, I have chosen to go a traditional publishing path. And what that means is that once you've written the book and it's pretty much done and dusted, I mean, it is done and dusted. It's been beta read by other, right? It's been edited, right? It's this whole, you are done and you are ready to submit it to the world. You start a process called querying. And that's the way you get an agent. So I take my book and I do a synopsis. I add comparisons to other books that have been popular. And I look for agents that want my genre of book and sort of the feel of what my characters are up to. And so I've identified about 30 agents, literary agents that I wanted to query, and I sent out my query letter to them. Every agent has a different way that they want the query letter to read and to be sent to them. So that was a really long process to find the right agents and then to tailor all those query letters. And then once you get and so then about 3% of the people that query an agent will actually get a request for the full manuscript. And I have gotten one request for my full manuscript. So I'm very excited about that.
Amazing. And one thing I'll add too, just for the business side of it, it's for the people listening, it's harder to get an agent than it is to get a book published.
Yes.
And it's because an agent will not take you unless they really believe they can sell it. Otherwise, they make no money, you make no money. There's no point. And they're not married to the heart of your book. They don't care.
They don't
They do care about you perhaps, but if they can't sell it, they're not going to take you on as a client.
Exactly, because once you get an agent, so after this process, if you're one of the lucky few 3% who get an agent, they have to find an editor, and the editor is connected with a publishing house, and then the publisher has to actually publish. So there's a series of gates, essentially. If you think about it like a gatekeeping exercise, you have to get an agent, then that agent has to find you an editor, and then you have to have a path towards actual publication. And at any one of those checkpoints, you can just be told no. And there's a lot of other authors that I've connected with who have had 5 or 6 books that have gone out for submission, but have never gotten actually published because the publisher didn't want them or couldn't sell them. So it's a very arduous process. You have to stay in it for a really long time, and then it takes years. The other way to do it is to self-publish.
Yeah. And I've done both.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first book, I went the traditional route like you. I got an agent, got a publisher, and a lot of rejection letters from publishers. One of the rejections is what led us to the publisher that ended up publishing my first book. And my second book, I formed a publishing company, did all the things right, hired a book designer. If you wouldn't pick up my book and not know, I mean, and know that
Totally.
that I had this publishing company that did this. And either way works. And
Yeah.
I just wonder, we have 1 minute left. Why did you choose this way? Because it is a harder way.
I chose
Well, it's a different hard, I should say.
It is a different hard. I chose the traditional route because I believe in this story and its marketability nationwide, and I don't believe in my ability to market it to the
That's a very good answer to
yeah.
what could be a complicated question. And so we aren't going to talk about the title or the story behind your book because I want you to come back and share it when the book is published. And that will happen. And I believe in you and I believe in your writing. And I love that I get to read what you're writing every single week. So I will put your information about your Substack blog. It's called How to Be a Difficult Woman. I think you're lovely. I don't think you're difficult, but I'll live with you. So
Yeah, you might change.
I cheat. More time I spend with you, who knows? Thanks for being here, Lindsay. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Lisa.